Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today we're going to have a look at illness and what actually makes you ill. What is going on in illness and the biology of belief, as well as the role of bacteria in the body. We're often told that bacteria is terrible, which is why some people are put off things like raw milk, because they say, oh, but it's got bacteria in it, hasn't it? And people don't realise that that actually is the bacteria that you need, and it's doing good stuff. Well, my guest today is Daniel Thompson-Mills, who has written a number of exciting books. There's another one on money. We'll have a look at those a little later on the programme. But he has a wonderful book here called The Myth that Viruses Cause Disease and the Nature of Illness. And it's the nature of illness, I think, that we're going to concentrate. You may remember I had Dawn Lester on talking about what really makes you ill, and she was talking about things like viruses and how perhaps we've been mistaken, and that actually germ theory is not what it's laid out to be, but terrain theory somewhat different. So Daniel, welcome back to the show. You've been a frequent visitor. You get a discount, by the way.
Wonderful. I've got my frequent air miles, have I? Yes.
That's it. The frequent Vobes miles.
Vobes miles.
What good they do you, I don't know. But yes, the biology of belief. That's interesting. Is that to do with? I've forgotten his name now. The guy who says that actually what we believe really affects how the body recreates itself. Bruce Lipton.
Bruce Lipton. That's right. That was that phrase was coined by him. And now we've also, in relation to that, we've also got a whole body of science, if you like, and understanding, which is called German New Medicine.
Right.
It's all about this psychological, emotional aspect to what causes us to get ill. So I think we can begin by just stating, well, firstly, what is bioterrain medicine? What am I talking about?
What are you talking about, Daniel?
So bio means the body, terrain is the soil of our body, if you like. So in a nutshell, what we're talking about here is rather than the body being a battlefield as it's portrayed in conventional medicine with the germ theory of disease, where we've got all these outside pathogens that are trying to invade the body and take over and multiply and make us ill, and we have to arrange our defense forces against. In other words, it's just another of these war analogies that goes on in many different areas. Well, no, actually, the body is an ecosystem, or a garden, is another way of putting it. And we're full of microorganisms, and they're all working symbiotically and synergistically to create health. We're just the inner is a reflection of the outer. We look around us, ideally in a beautiful world. We have a functioning ecosystem, and we want a functioning ecosystem within as well. Right. So therefore, and we talked about this last time, so we're not going to go into that. Actually, when you look into it, you look into the so-called science of virology, it all turns out to be a house of cards that easily collapses when you start to look at the studies and so on. And all of this idea that bacteria cause disease and well, actually, they're doing the opposite. They're actually helping us to get better, which is why they're at you see them at the site of illness and disease. So, okay, so we're not being made ill and killed by these pathogens. So what does make us ill? Because, of course, we get ill. It's part of being human. Well, the causes of illness are very simple, really. The first one is very obvious. You injure yourself. You get knocked over by a car. You fall off your bicycle. The body's damaged. It has to repair itself. That's straightforward. The second one is what Dr. Cowan, a sort of mentor of mine, if you like, Dr. Tom Cowan, talks about as starvation, which sounds quite extreme, doesn't it? But
it does.
Ways that we can starve ourselves, not putting the right inputs into the body with nutritionally, either
Highly processed foods and things
and
like
well,
that.
processed foods or just foods that lacking in certain nutrients, basically, and that's very
Mm.
common, obviously. But it's also it goes beyond that. It's we're in all of these categories. We have to think about the mental emotional side of things because that's huge. So it's being starved of affection, being well. I mean, yeah, we might be starved of oxygen, might be starved of water as well, but it's starved of affection, starved of community, um, uh, and so on. The third category is another big one, which is toxicity. Um,
We're not starved of that at the moment,
we're
Daniel.
not starved of that. We're given plenty of that in our modern society,
Yes.
whether it's what's sprayed in the skies to glyphosate everywhere, that
Mm.
horrible agrochemical that gets everywhere, to things like cyanide and arsenic and well, man-made electromagnetic frequencies, another big one,
Yes.
which certainly doesn't get talked about in the mainstream, unsurprisingly. Um, but also, again, it relates very much to our emotional, psychological being side of our being. And here we're talking about, essentially that we're all traumatized. We live in traumatized society. We have our own personal trauma from our own lifetimes. We have our ancestral trauma that gets passed on to us through the generations. And then we have the collective trauma that comes about through all the wars and et cetera, that have been going on for, many a long time.
Mm.
And all of that trauma has never been healed. So we've ended up with a big, huge amount of trauma. And to begin with, we certainly almost everybody has some sort of birth trauma, be it that you weren't breastfed, you weren't given the affection that you really needed, et cetera, et cetera. Perhaps
It
you
is amazing that we're actually able to function at all based on all of
well,
this, isn't it?
I have to say, I mean, the incredible thing is that the body is extremely robust,
Mm.
or it can be at least. And the good news in all of this is that the body has an amazing ability to heal. I mean, it's incredibly intelligent. I mean, talk about technology. It's the most sophisticated technology out there by far, and is completely underrated. Um, Now, the conventional medical system tries to get us into this victim consciousness. We're at the mercy of these outside pathogens. We
Mm.
have to give over our power to doctors who are the experts and they know best and all of this. Well, a real proper bioterrain doctor will be really assisting each patient to find the healing that they need within themselves, find their own inner physician, if you like. And that doesn't mean to say we don't need help and advice and support along the way, because we do. But
Mm.
ultimately, it's all down to us. It's our body that's going to heal. It's we that have to do the work internally. If it's and putting the right inputs into the body and getting the right exercise, getting out into nature, all of this sort of thing. Um, so it's down to us. We're the ones that need to take responsibility for our health, not hand it over to others. That's my big thing. So what is illness? When we get ill, we've been poisoned, we've been starved, and generally it's a multiplicity of factors. It's both physical and emotional, mental factors, all sorts of things come into play. It might also be that um, there's some injury, physical injury as part of it. Um, so the body is then, as I say, incredibly intelligent, and it goes into what's called a therapeutic response. In other words, illness is the body trying to repair itself and fix itself. So, really, what our best thing to do is allow that process to happen because it may be uncomfortable, it may be challenging, you may feel tired, you may feel, horrible, you may, et cetera, et cetera. But give it the space and time it needs, rest,
Mm.
Give yourself the right inputs, and that might be just simply resting, maybe having a break from eating, which is always good. A bit of fasting can help illness, um, move through illness. You've got to just, the main thing is you've got to tune into what feels right for you. Of course, we can talk about herbs and acupuncture and all sorts of wonderful things that we have available to us. And so we want to, so as well as just allowing the body to do its own thing, we need to support that process. So yeah, that's what illness is all about. And that's how to take responsibility for when we're ill and realize that actually it's just a part of being human. And if we allow it to move through, and we can, rather than just treating the symptoms as modern medicine does, try and suppress the symptoms,
Mm.
and Bob's your auntie. Well, that doesn't clear up the underlying causes. So when we actually shift things at a deeper level, then when we come out of that phase of feeling ill, if we've allowed it, supported it, allowed it to go through its full process, then we feel so much better afterwards. We have more energy, we feel more alive, the body feels cleansed. So that's the way to go as far as I'm concerned. It's the bioterrain approach.
Presumably, the body is doing this every day anyway. In very tiny degrees, it's correcting itself. It's getting rid of stuff it doesn't want. It's only if you've over poisoned yourself with toxins and radiation and all this sort of stuff that it sort of clobbers you, so that you're sitting there going, "Oh God,
Yes, indeed,
yeah."
indeed.
But presumably, the body's on that alert all the time, and
Well, it
stuff you don't even
is.
know is happening.
Yeah, of course, the liver, for example, is working 24/7 to take toxins out of the blood and process them through the bile out into the bowel, where we can then poo them out. We've got our kidneys that are filtering the fluids and the urine, and so on and so on. So yes, but my big thing is that I encourage people, because of the amount that we're being bombarded with toxicity, toxic EMFs, toxic television, toxic food, just goes on, toxic
Mm.
air that we're breathing. We've got to be proactive about our health on every level. So proactive about detoxing, and that, for example, three things that I particularly focus on in the book, on that is, um, uh, thinking, you do what feels right for you and try different things out. But I particularly, am into doing regular green coffee enemas, which are fantastic at boosting your liver, and getting a big dump of toxicity out of the body, in a short period of time, and boosting your glutathione levels, which is the detoxing chemical that works through the body. There's another thing called castor oil packs, which are great, very soothing. You basically have castor oil in a sponge, in a pack that you tie around your body. You put a hot water bottle on top and allow it to do its thing for a while. There's more detail to that, but I'm just giving you an overview.
Mm.
And again, these things are all referenced in my book.
In the book, yeah.
And fasting is an incredible tool, for especially if you go 3 days or more, because then the body goes into what's called autophagy, which is where it's realizing it's not getting any more inputs in food. So it's saying, okay, now I've got all this time and energy, that a lot of which is spent on digestion, because digestion just spend a huge amount of our energy and the body's focus. Well, if I'm not having to do that, I can actually have a bit of a clear out. I can clear out the clutter
Yes.
and get rid of some of the cobwebs and all of this sort of thing. So autophagy, if you're able to, regular fasting is a good thing. It doesn't have to be 3 days, but every so often to do a longer fast is extremely beneficial. And certainly if you're facing a big health challenge, then a fast can really help that to move. Obviously, this is all just generalization, and you have to tune into what feels right for you in the moment.
Hmm.
Sometimes experimenting is good. Try something out, see if it works, see what the results are.
When you said, can I just ask you a question about
Yes,
the coffee enema that you spoke? Because
yes,
I remember you talking about this in the last show. You
we
said that you do
did, we
it,
did, yes.
and what I didn't do, because somebody else mentioned they did it, and I said, oh, I was, interviewing Daniel about this, and I had these images. Unless you know what you're doing, I had these very strange, somewhat weird images of percolating coffee in a cafetiere, taking a funnel and a tube and a, like you do with winemaking. And I just had this idea. So they said, no, it's nothing like. It's kind of a bit like that, but nothing like that. But so
Well,
you buy a kit, is that right? It's not like you're taking the coffee off your shelf and a bit of instant coffee or coffee beans that you would normally have your coffee. You said green coffee.
well,
Could you just take us
I much prefer green coffee, and it's the most superior coffee
right?
do for enemas, which is unroasted,
Yes,
essentially. And I've got in the book there's a reference to a UK supplier of organic green coffee, and it's not difficult to get hold of. Um, but you can use roasted coffee. Obviously, you'd go for I bet ideally a good quality, um,
mm,
um, you know,
organic one or something.
freshly ground roasted coffee. So you can certainly get going with that. And it's very straightforward, really. I mean, essentially what you do is you boil it for ideally in some, good quality water. You boil the coffee for 15 minutes. It's best to keep it uncovered, the saucepan uncovered initially for a few minutes just to allow the oils to burn off. And then once they've burnt off, you can put a lid on it and keep it going for about 15 minutes.
Sort of boiling or simmering,
Well, you kind of get it to boiling and then you
and
simmer it.
then
Yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah. And then you get what I would suggest, highly recommend is a stainless steel enema pot, which is basically just like a little bucket with a
right,
with a with a an outlet at the bottom. Um, and then coming off the outlet is a silicon. You can get a silicon tube with a valve on that to open and close it.
right,
And then you put a muslin over the top of the coffee pot, of the enema pot rather, and put the coffee through the muslin through the filter,
right.
and then you've got liquid, and you top it up to the level that you want in terms of the amount you want to put in. Now, it's best to start small with the amount of coffee, firstly, and secondly with the amount of liquid, and build up and just find what feels right for you over time in terms of the quantity of liquid and the strength of the mixture.
Hmm.
And you want that fluid at body temperature
Right, yes.
so
You
that when
don't
it
want it
goes in,
steaming hot, do you?
it feels comfortable. It's not too cold. It's not too
Yeah.
hot.
No.
Of course, is about 37 degrees centigrade. So you try and get it as best as you can around that temperature. Um, and then you lie down. Ideally, you set this up in your bathroom,
Hmm.
lie down in the bath, um, and it's all gravity fed. So you hang the pot up with the tube. The tube has a nozzle that you fit onto the end, and it's got a valve. So you fit the nozzle into your rear end, and then open the valve, and start taking the fluid in. And that takes about a few minutes, depending on the amount of fluid. And then once you've got it all in, then you take the tube, the nozzle out, and just sit back and enjoy and retain the
Right.
as best you can. There might be some seepage, which is why it's best to say be in a bath, or at least
Yes.
some waterproof thing underneath you, and towels or anything to gather up any fluid.
And
Um,
how long are you there for then?
well, 15 minutes. So basically, what happens is every few minutes, the blood circulates completely around the body. And then what the coffee enema is doing is it's stimulating the liver to dump all of its toxicity that it's got retained into the bile and out into the bowel. And because during 15 minutes you've got quite a number of cycles of that, you're doing over and over again, really until you've completely cleared out the liver.
Mm.
After 15 minutes, there's no point going on any further, really. You've kind of done your maximum on that. And then, of course, you go onto the toilet and you release it all. So an enema is not, I mean, it's good just to clean the lower bowel anyway, which you can do with a water enema or a herbal enema. But the coffee particularly stimulates this much stronger detoxification through the liver. And as I said earlier, it causes the body to produce, I think it's something like 300 times the normal amount of glutathione, which is a chemical that then goes through the whole body and is a sort of detoxification cleansing chemical. So that causes even more stuff to be released and ejected ultimately.
When you've completed that, do you need to? You're not sort of having to add any like probiotics or anything to the system to, if you flushed out, say, some good stuff instead of just bad stuff.
No, I think if you're doing, I'm not particularly keen on probiotic pills,
Mm.
because they have, I'm not particularly keen generally on taking pills. I much prefer to do as much as possible have natural inputs.
Mm.
So certainly, taking your fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, maybe fermented drinks like kombucha, and fermented dairy, perhaps like kefir. All of those things are great for microorganisms, and they have a full spectrum. And it's the microorganisms, if you've particularly made it yourself, it's the microorganisms of your ecosystem. So it's perfect for you. I mean, also just getting out into nature, getting your hands in the soil, getting your hands
Mm.
on the trees, and getting your bare feet on the earth, that's all really good for building up your microbiome. So as long as you're doing all of that, or some combination of that, and eating healthily, etc., don't think you need to worry about the fact that you're flushing out the lower bowel.
Right.
Um, the microorganisms will all be in good health, or well, relatively good health.
Mm.
um, um, so yeah, I mean, it's stimulating to the body. Obviously, you get a bit of a caffeine hit from a coffee enema.
So
Um,
don't do it last thing at night, then,
no, I
presumably.
always do it in the morning.
Right.
I always do it in the morning, actually.
Yes.
It's stimulating. It feels unlike drinking coffee, and I'm not a fan of drinking coffee, and I've not drunk coffee for years, which kind of I feel it overstimulates the adrenals, and and then of course you can get the jitters if you do overdo it. I think my sense of things with the coffee enema, and particularly a green coffee enema, is that it's a kind of nourishing stimulation, and you feel literally cleansed. You feel internally cleansed afterward.
Mm. Gosh.
Um, it's a lovely feeling. And, so the whole process, we have to overcome our very British thing about we don't talk about, poo, and we
Yeah.
don't talk about,
Sticking things up
um,
the rear end.
all of that sort of thing.
Mm.
Um, There's lots of other cultures where it's just, you
It's
just
normal.
get on with it. It's part of life.
And
The bowel actually is fundamental to health. Bowel health is fundamental to health. It's literally that your base,
yes,
Um,
how often would you do that? Your
well,
coffee
it's a
enema.
bit like, how long's a piece of string, really.
Mm,
What I started particularly getting into them about over 2 years ago. And I started by doing one every day for about a couple of weeks to really get myself up and running. And,
right.
basically go through a focused period of cleansing. And it was, I think it was in January. So it was a good time of year when there's not much else going on and all of that sort
Mm,
of thing. Can focus on that. And um, but I mean, essentially now as a maintenance, I'm doing one a week.
right.
That would be my general recommendation, to do one a week. But it's also good to do if you're starting to feel a bit under the weather, or you've been naughty and you've eaten something that's not agreeing with you, or maybe you've had a bit too much alcohol and you feel a bit,
Mm,
hungover. That will really speed that along and just kind of, it's a bit like a reset button, really. It
right. So
helps.
if you're having, say, without lowering the tone too much, but if you've got very loose bowels or stools, and and you clearly, I mean, I had that the other day because we went up to London. We had to eat lots of. There was nowhere to eat, so in the end, you're eating pasta and all this sort of stuff, and it's all wheat, and then the body is kicking that out and going, should have had too much of that, mate. And they're going, yeah,
Yes,
no, I
yes,
know
yes,
that.
yes.
But we had to eat something because we
Well,
couldn't.
we always do, silly things or naughty things or things that we just have to do in the moment
Mm.
from time to time.
So, but that would be a good time to go. Oh yeah, I can see that this is. I just need to go and do my 15 minute.
Yeah, I mean, once you've got into the routine, it's about first time you're starting off, just give it plenty of time. Make
Mm.
sure you've not got a business meeting or something coming up.
Mm.
Do it on a Sunday or whenever you've got plenty of time, and get used to doing it, and then you kind of get more and more efficient.
Yes.
And
Plug
I could
yourself
do
in and
it.
away you
I
go.
think I could do the whole process now. I mean, you have to give it a bit of time anyway, but I'd say about an hour and a half on,
Right.
to max to kind of go from beginning to end, really.
Yeah.
And the more toxified that you are, then the more of a detox reaction you'll get. So you might be like peeing out a lot, for example, afterwards. But the more of them you do, then the lighter each one becomes because you're really just skimming off,
Right. Yeah. The
the
maintenance is.
latest
Yeah.
bit of toxicity that's come about, and you're not having to, deal with a whole load of backlog, really. Literally, yes,
Yes.
literally. Yeah. So that's coffee enemas, yeah,
Mm.
in a
There we go.
nutshell. Now, I mean,
All you wanted to know. Yes.
well, just to be clear, I'm not giving health advice here. Everybody's got to,
Yes.
just giving what my perspective is and my understanding. I'm
Absolutely.
not a health professional, and but I think the book is really. I mean, the thing about bioterrain medicine is it works in practice. It's all
Mm.
about, when the rubber hits the road. We can have all this intellectual understanding, but does it make sense to begin with? And secondly, does it bring about results for our lives? Because that's what it's all about. I'm applying it. It's been hugely important for me. And I'm learning more. I'm constantly researching and learning more all the time. Uh,
One of the things we do know about the pharmaceutical idea is that they all come with side effects. So the question then is, are there any side effects with the sort of things that you've been describing?
well, I mean,
I mean, there might be good side effects,
well,
as in you
yes. I
feel
mean,
so much better.
sometimes this is why I'm not giving health advice.
Mm.
And ideally, we'd have readily available bioterrain practitioners like GPs, really, that we can
Right.
go and consult. Well, there are plenty of what we call alternative medical therapists and so on we can access. But generally that costs money, obviously. If you can afford those sort of things and you have particularly have connections with certain, therapists. Um, but really, this is why the book is here.
Mm.
Give guidance to everybody, and there's lots of links in the book, so you can follow up and do your own research. And I'm not saying, believe me, what I'm saying is this is what makes sense to me. This is working well in practice for me.
Mm.
Um, but you've got to decide for yourself. It's you're responsible for your own health. And it's all about, it's not like the conventional medical system, which is all one size fits all. It's about what is your story, what's your particular situation, what does your intuition. We want to develop our intuition and use that, amazing tool that we have to get a sense of which avenues feel right for us to go down. And as I say, sometimes just experiment as well, see if things work for you. You know, you might be more into castor oil packs than green coffee enemas.
Mm.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to approach these things. Um, yes, how does that all sound?
Well, that sounds great. So, tell us a bit more about the bacteria then, because you've got the role of the bacteria in the body. We're often scared of it. Is there any bacteria that isn't good for us?
Well, let's begin from yeah, thank you for the question. Let's begin and just build it up and get to that
Mm.
last bit
Okay,
after a
cool.
while. So, as I said right at the beginning, the body is an ecosystem, and we've
Yeah.
got all these microorganisms in the body. Now, when you find cholera at the site of illness, which has the symptoms of what's described as cholera, um, these bacteria can be found, and then conventional medical doctors can make the complete error of saying, we found these bacteria in the body at that moment because they're thinking in terms of the germ theory.
Mm.
They're thinking, they're causing the illness, those horrible bacteria. Well, actually, the bacteria are there because what is cholera? Basically, you've drunk water or eaten something where essentially it's toxified. So the classic example is that you're drinking water where, feces are going into the water. The water's impure, and the toxins in the feces you're drinking that water, and then the body gets toxified. Now, what then happens is the body's very intelligent. Body goes into a therapeutic response, and these bacteria are called upon, the cholera bacteria are called upon to clean up the mess. They're the
Right.
body's waste disposal system. So they will proliferate and start hoovering stuff up and helping you out. Now, so what we want to be doing is allowing and supporting them to do their thing, and it will make us feel ill. Now, as I said earlier, feeling ill is not a bad thing that we want to suppress and just get over with and done with as soon as possible. We want to allow and support it to happen. We want to give the body the inputs it needs and so on, and the rest and so on. Um, Another way of describing this whole thing is if you see firemen at a fire, you don't think the fireman caused the fire, do you? No, they're trying to put it out. They're trying
They're
to
trying to put it out. Yeah.
clear up the mess. Or another analogy is if you see a dead deer in the woods and the maggots are eating up the rotting flesh, well, we don't think the maggots, killed the.
Cause the flare. No.
So there are various analogies for it.
And
Now,
is that what? So I mean, when people get into that, they often sort of go to their doctor, and the doctor will give antibiotics. Is that not stripping away the maggots that are actually getting rid of the thing, or killing off the
well,
firemen who are trying to put out the fire?
yeah, exactly. Bacteria they won't be eating away, if you like, living flesh. They'll be clearing away the dross.
Mm. No, I was using your analogy of the
Yeah,
maggots doing the flesh and
yeah.
the,
So we
the
don't want to
fireman.
kill the maggots.
No,
Maggots
exactly.
are cleaning the carcass, if you like.
Yeah,
They're going to turn it into something. They're going to turn it into life, back into life, living substance. Now, within all of this, particularly if you're very highly toxified in whatever way, um, the, the bacteria and the other microorganisms, like fungi as well, they can overproliferate and cause their own issues as
right.
a kind of secondary thing. So that we then might have to address that secondary problem, but we have to be aware and not just think that that's the thing to completely focus on. We have to deal with the underlying causes because that's ultimately what's going to clear things up. But in the meantime, we might need to particularly think about diet. So, for example, in relation to the candida fungi that can proliferate in the body and cause symptoms of overproduction of candida. Yes, so we're probably going to want to go on a candida diet where we're eating no or very minimal carbohydrates, so we're not feeding the fungi. Um, but if we just carry on that diet, we're not going to clear the underlying causes. We have to focus on the underlying causes. Now, I have candida issues, and I'm very, from my own experience and from my own intuition, I'm very clear on the fact that unfortunately, where I'm living in this flat, I'm subject to a lot of Wi-Fi because I'm living right in the middle of town. So I've got all the shops and pubs around me with their own Wi-Fi. I've got my neighbors with their Wi-Fi. So I'm getting a lot of man-made EMF toxicity,
Mm.
and that's causing the candida to overproliferate. So even though I'm eating a largely, very minimal carb diet, it's not clearing the candida completely. And as soon as I go away and I camp or I go and stay at a friend's house, my candida clears up, so it's very obvious
Yes,
what's
you're
going
in the
on.
wrong place.
And ultimately, the only solution for that, which is what I'm trying to bring about at the moment, is to move out of this flat and get away
Yeah.
from
Yes.
all the and get away to a bit more of a clear space in relation to that electromagnetic smog. Um,
And I suppose a lot of people are in the same boat, aren't they? Because we all are, not all of us, but the majority of people live in towns and cities now. We've all fled from the rural countryside.
yes,
But even in the rural countryside, you live in a house with several people. They've all got Wi-Fi, they've got their phones. So
yes,
they've sort of put a smog around themselves, not realizing.
yes. Well, that I mean, that's again another massive topic.
Hmm.
So let's just put that to one side for a moment, really,
Hmm.
and just carry on with the bacteria because I wanted to. Um, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So I mean, just really, the last thing to say is the absolutely worst thing to do is take antibiotics or antifungals because not only are you killing all your helpers, even if they're causing secondary issues,
Hmm.
you don't want to get rid of all your helpers and blitz your microbiome, which is so important to your health generally. But yeah, I mean, you're just toxifying the body more essentially. So you're then putting yourself in a worse position. You've got to rebuild your microbiome. You've got more toxicity in the body. So over time, you're going to get more bacteria trying to clean up because there's more of a job to do. So you'll just be going back to the doctor every so often, getting more and more antibiotics, and going down that route where that results ultimately in quite probably in chronic disease of one sort or another.
Hmm.
The more that we clean ourselves, proactively, and as I say, allow the body to go through this therapeutic response that we call illness, then in the longer run, nothing's guaranteed, but in the longer run, we're much likely to be in a better state of health and have more energy and feel more alive and so on and so on. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people have been perhaps persuaded that they need to go and get over-the-counter drugs. You know, most people when they get ill, they go, "Oh, right, I'll go and get some simple pharmaceutical, shall we say, like an aspirin or a paracetamol, or some sort of concoction of that, or codeine or something." And so that's the first thing. Or they're frightened of, oh, you better eat a hearty meal, or you better take, lots of different things, because people are very quick to say, oh, yes, I know what you're deficient in. You're deficient in this, that, and the other. But going back to the fasting sounds like a very sensible thing, that you're not putting extra work for the bacteria that's in doing the work by adding too much additional stuff that's going, oh, blimey, we were all right a minute ago. Now you've just given us a whole load of
Yeah,
problems.
I mean, it all depends. You might be so depleted, you've not been eating the right things. You might be lacking in collagen, for example, and that might be um, resulting in arthritic symptoms or whatever. And maybe you do need to be eating heartily and building your body up,
Right.
putting the right, putting the right inputs in. As I say, there's no one size fits all.
No.
And what bioterrain medicine is all about is that we are stories, if you like. Why we're ill, there's a story behind it. And what bioterrain medicine is about is, well, particularly as a practitioner of that and help and supporting and helping a patient, it's about teasing out their story, you know.
Mm.
And a good practitioner will just spend quite a bit of time asking questions and finding out what's going on. Oh, my wife left me, 6 months ago. Oh, maybe you're now getting physical symptoms because of all the emotional and psychological aspects of that. It's working out through the physical. Um, but as I say, there's always a multiplicity of factors. But and the more chronic, if you like, and not so much acute the symptoms are and the manifestations, the more likely there's certainly quite a bit of trauma involved in that of one sort or another, and so on. So we need to find out what the story is, and often just by
Mm.
doing that, it becomes clear what the solution is, or the solutions, or the way to go. And sometimes, as I say, there's a bit of experimentation that's needed. Try something out, if it doesn't work, or it doesn't feel right, go down some other routes. But it's exciting as well. I mean, this is what I love about it. Once we get out of the germ theory model, which is all about being a victim, you're at the mercy, just suppress the symptoms,
Yes.
give over your power to the doctor. Actually, when you take your power back, you understand what this whole thing, what's going on in the body, what it is, the intelligence of it. It feels so much more alive. It feels so much more nourishing, more healthy. And yeah, it's not like we don't have challenges. Being human, we have huge challenges.
We do, yes.
But the more we tackle and work to clear and heal our trauma and so on, then it just I feel more and more better, all the time as a result of that. Um,
You
there's
mentioned
a long
about
way to go. I'm not anywhere near clearing all my trauma or my ancestral trauma or the collected, but I'm
yes.
working on it. And each time, each step that I take, I feel more alive, more in connection with the earth and so on. So that's really what life is about, in my view.
You mentioned things like worry and stress and things like that in our lives, emotional responses to things, which at the moment we seem a lot of that with a lot of policies that the government happen to be putting out, the fuel costs, work-related stress, the sort of dehumanization of every authority that you interact with. You're now more of a number than a person. You can't get to see people to talk things over. You have to do things online or by email. And that lack of humanity that seems to be everywhere.
Exactly.
that does seem to I mean, this is a kind of a new way of thinking. We're beginning to realize that actually we need to interact with one another rather than be
Yes.
separate.
Well, of course, the agenda is very clearly, in my view, the agenda is to keep us in fear as much as possible. It doesn't matter whether it's fear of a virus, fear of Vladimir Putin, fear of our neighbor, whatever it is.
Yes.
Um, uh, so keep us in fear, dumb us down as much as possible with processed food, with crap television, with um, stuff being sprayed in the air, and then keep us disempowered through the
And
voting
compliant.
system. Isn't that
Yeah.
wonderful? Democracy, or through being, giving over your power to doctors, being dependent on the state in whatever way, and as well as being coerced and robbed by, everybody left, right, and centre. Ultimately, to being made into a transhuman robot and put it underneath a social credit system and all of that. So the more that we just step away from that, create our own reality, not only on our own, but with others. I mean, everything starts from community. And you know that very much, don't you, Richard? And you're a big advocate of that and getting back onto the land and finding a new.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, one of the places most people could start is just getting together around the table for one meal a day, or at least 2 or 3 meals a week, where the family starts, and rebuild the family community. And
Absolutely.
because if you don't build it there, how are you going to build it outside? So that
Exactly.
get away from the screens where you're just putting something into your mouth,
Yes.
and that
Well, of
seems very
course, the
important.
agenda is to create more and more of a virtual world.
Mm.
And Ian Jarvis, I don't know whether you know him, but
I've interviewed him a couple of times. Yeah.
he's a fantastic um, expert really on 5G and all the effects of EMFs and so on. Anyway, I came across a quote that he was passing on from one of these telecom companies saying something along the lines of all the new networks that we're bringing in will help to facilitate the virtualization of all parts of life. So,
My
yeah,
God.
it's there
Yeah.
out in the open.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rather scary, isn't
Virtualize
it?
all parts of life. It's like that's not a world that I want.
No. No.
I'm with you. I want to be, in person on the earth, real
Absolute.
things.
Embracing your fellow man and woman
Yeah.
in real time, in physical space.
And it's not like technology doesn't have its uses. Here it
Of
is.
course, yeah. It is. It
But
is
let's use it
useful.
wisely and yet use it for beneficial aims and not overdo it.
Yeah. No, that's right. And of course, the upshot of all of that is that it would make us much more ill, because the body will be desperately struggling, presumably, in this toxic world where you're sat behind a screen, you never see anybody, you're worried about when your income is, you've been kept down. The poor body, I mean, life would be very short, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, Richard, let's just think about walking down the average high street, and do people look well? Do they look lively?
No,
They look overweight. They look,
yes. We only have to look around and
it
see
just
them as they are now.
they look like zombies some of the time. It's just
Mm,
like
it,
this is what humanity has become.
yes. And the irony is, here we are in the 21st century, presumably the best we've ever been, and then you look at us and you go, hang on a minute, something's gone
Yeah,
disastrously wrong,
but
hasn't it?
hang on a sec, Richard. This is the modern medical miracle here.
Yes, I know.
Meanwhile, the rates of chronic disease are forever on the march.
Yes. If people can't see that now, if people cannot see that we are supposedly at the top of our game, and yet more people are ill and dying left, right, and centre from all sorts of problems, or are ill or depressed, or all these things, there's
Yes,
got to be something that we're doing that isn't quite right.
it's a bit of a no-brainer, Richard, isn't
It is really. I'm sure we can all know that.
it?
But it's funny how we're all, well, not all, but we're so dependent. We seem to be
Well,
or you
people
look
are
at
obviously
people.
dumbed down. They're indoctrinated. They're given
Mm.
this sort of Netflix and nights down the pub and Amazon deliveries to keep them
Well, I wouldn't mind nights
supposedly
down the pub,
content.
nights down the old tavern where you get round a piano and you share a sing song
Well,
and,
yes, I'm with
you know,
that. I'm with that.
all that kind of community.
Yeah, no, I'm with
No problem with that.
yes.
But the big screens and all of this, where again you're down the pub with your fellow man, but suddenly you're no longer talking to them
Well,
because
yeah,
you're
that's right. The screen just dominates, doesn't it?
absolutely. So yeah, is there any other? I just have a look at the time here. Is there any other
Well,
aspects that
I
you
think
wanted to?
we've probably chatted enough, haven't we,
We have.
for the
So
time being?
let me
Um,
just show your website up because you
yeah,
have
that'd
a
be
host of
wonderful. Thank you,
interesting
Richard.
things on there. Let me just find it here. Here it is. It's Dandelion Speaks, which I do love that name. I think it's such a very lovely name.
Well, that's my moniker, Dandelion, yes, because
Ah, there you
plenty of
go.
plants.
And just quickly scrolling up here, we can see the truth about the money system, how money is created, which is another of your excellent books. Um, and the one we've been talking about, bioterrain medicine and
Yes,
the
and
nature of
just to
illness.
say, I've just brought out I mean, the big reason why this interview is happening is because I've just brought out the third edition of that, which is over a third as long again as the second edition.
So more,
I'm
more
very
pages for your buck, as they
More
say.
pages for you, but I'm really excited about it.
And then for those who are in any doubt that
Yes, yes.
man-made climate change is a bit of a myth, then here it is, Daniel's Guide to the Case Against Man-Made Climate Change.
Yeah, and as I say, all these books are about breaking through the mainstream paradigm, and that's when it gets exciting, and we can see what's really going on and how to empower ourselves and move forward to create a better world. I mean, that's what it's all about
It
ultimately.
certainly is. And more people, it does seem, are waking up to that now. I mean, I was just amazed at how much alternative media is now dominating. People are moving away from the
Yes,
mainstream media and finding it very narrow in its outlook and its arguments. And there's
yes,
this wealth of wonderful stuff
yes,
giving, even if you don't necessarily immediately accept it, it's giving a chance for people to go, oh, and be open-minded to it.
yes, yes. And there's kind of people like what's his name, Joe Rogan, who kind of bring people in a bit into those sort of spheres. And
Yeah, I mean, I think we are slowly, people are beginning to realize that it isn't everything in this very narrow band that a lot of authorities have told us it all is,
well, I mean, we're in
like with
obviously,
germ theory.
Richard, we're in a make or break situation now.
Well, we are now.
We certainly are. So let's just be the pioneers of creating a better world. Um,
Absolutely. Well,
it,
you've done marvelously with your books, demonstrating that and making this very readily available so that people. And the other thing is, I mean, having and people do send me lots of books. Some books are more complicated to read than others on these quite difficult, challenging ideas. But yours is very easy to digest, and you're not talking down to anybody, but it's you can follow it so easy. So and that's what we need, because we need everyday people. It's not just for scientists and
yes.
things.
Well, in each of the books, I have a summary of like a 3 or 4 page summary at the beginning as well. So you can get an overview, and there's lots of links, as I say, to follow up
Mm.
and do your own research. So yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, I try and make them as accessible as possible, but also with depth. They've all
Mm.
got depth as well.
Yes, no, absolutely. That's brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on and telling us more about that, and especially about the in-depth coffee and enema, which we've now cleared up.
Well, I'm hoping
Expect
you're going to have a go, Richard.
I am actually. I'm going to
Yeah,
get in the
good, good,
bath and give it. I just have to put the fire on because my bathroom is pretty cold.
good.
If I'm in there for 15 minutes, it's all right if you're immersed in hot water, which is great. But if you're just lying there, presumably you can have your top half.
Oh, you have your
When you're
top half covered. Yes.
covered. Yeah, you still can still be warm in there.
Yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. So, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show, telling us all about that. Your book is available principally from your website, if I remember
Not
right.
on Amazon, folks.
Not on Amazon. I think
Yeah, through my website, and you'll link to that, won't you?
I will. It'll be in the description. so people can check that out. But if just in case for some reason, sometime it's best if I just mention that. Hang on, let's go to it. Wrong page.
Shall I? Shall I read?
Read out the URL just in case, because sometimes
Yes.
YouTube are a bit funny and they cut links that go to something that the WHO doesn't like people to know about.
Right. Well, it's dandelionspeaks.msvr.uk. So it's Dandelion Speaks, all one word.
Yeah.
.msvr, M for mother, V for Victor, msvr dot co
.uk.
hang on a sec.
Just .uk. I've got it in
Dot
front of me.
UK, thank you. Not co. Dot
Yeah,
UK.
no co's in it. Brilliant stuff, Daniel. I will link to it anyway, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But just in case.
Yeah, brill. And
Brilliant.
yeah, link to the previous interview, and that would be great too.
Yeah, no, I will. I'll get that sorted out, and it will be fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that, and do go and check out Daniel's website. Lots of other goodies on there as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Daniel. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with. I'm hoping that we meet up on one of these events that are going
I'll
on.
be at the Shine seminars again. Will you be there?
I think so. I will. Yes, that's
Awesome.
down in August.
Yes.
In Gloucestershire. So very much look forward to that.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back with more monologues and wonderful interviews. And in the meantime, from Daniel and I, thank you so much for watching.
Yes.
Till next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.